I just took both 2025 AP World History exams, so let's jump into it. I'll walk you through what I thought about them. You took one of them. You probably took one of them. So there's two editions. I'm hearing a myriad of theories as to what they mean. It could be East Coast, West Coast. Some places, the same room had multiple versions of this exam. So that's fine. I'm going to walk you through set one. I'm going to walk you through set two. So set one, I'll do first. Set two, I don't know, if the first SAQ, you're like, that wasn't mine, then jump to that one. And if it's not one of those two, then you probably had some super secret version they don't really like to talk about. So I'm going to start in. I'm not going to spend a million hours on each of this. I took less time to go through this than you did, hopefully, during the exam. But I figured this is fresh in mind for you, so I would drop this today on Monday to let you know. So yeah, let's do it. I'm going to walk you through set one first. A lot of stuff we talked about in the review was on the exam, so let's do this right now. The AP World History 2025 exam looked like this. If you had set one, I don't know if on your end it said set one. I'm not allowed in there. They don't let me do anything. So maybe you saw this, maybe you didn't. So yeah, let's walk through it. So I made some notes as I went through, not a ton, but just a few. So you'll see me clicking and typing over here. But I figured you might want to know what I would say. So, and again, which ones I would pick? Ooh, which ones would I have picked? I don't know. Let's find out. So this was the 2025. So again, you start with the SAQs. They never released the multiple choice, so I don't know what the multiple choice. I did take it 1 year when I was doing the score setting, so that was fun. I'm not really allowed to talk about it, but I did take it. 55 questions, 55 minutes, no joke. But that's neither here nor there. All we have here is the free response question. So let's jump right in. You can see here, I'll full screen this if you're like, well, I didn't take the exam. I just want to know. Okay, then pause it here. Read this SAQ number one. All right, so you read SAQ number one, presumably. If not, that's fine. I'll walk you through it. This is from Jack Weatherford. So it's rare that I even know a source. I mean, not that I'm some expert in this. It's just been doing it for 20 years. But when I look at it, I'm like, like a lot of the stuff in the DBK, I don't know any of that is, or these people are, these sources are. But this guy I know. He actually wrote a famous book about, I'm sure he wrote famous books about other things, but I used to read it in class. It was about the Mullen Bulls. So he's that kind of guy. So first SAQ is kind of earlier in the time span than the later ones. They go kind of chronologically. So this is kind of a Unit 4. This is definitely Unit 4. This is a Unit 4 SAQ. So with the taste of Unit 2 kind of left over. So I'll walk you through it. Here it says, oh, you can see my mouse. Do you remember in the review sesh where I was like, hey, I'm going to look at this SAQ because they do this one thing and they're probably going to do it this year. That's this thing right here. That's identify a claim. So, and it's in the first paragraph. So it's talking about the effect of the discovery of the Americas, but the effect on Africa. So how did that affect Africa? So cool. Let's look in a little closer so you can see it. But specifically, all right. So first paragraph is hopefully that one. Hopefully that's the one you picked. So anything is fine here. A European discovery of silver destroyed African gold markets and the trade networks that went with them. That's a claim. Use that claim, right? That works. That's a claim. Anything in there. Cities crumbled because of that. That's a claim. Any of that's a claim. So any of that, you're good. Identify. We need to talk about letter B for a second. Remember how I said it's identify and explain, and they say describe, but they've never done a describe. This year they did describe. So this was the year they chose to do describe. So in reality, it's the same as explain. I mean, I'm sure your teacher may like argue semantics there, but if you're just like going into detail in your response and backing it up with some information, it's not like you need a thesis statement here, but if you're describing whatever it is you're talking about, you're good at, and it's again, almost interchangeable with explain. So if you're explaining something, you're probably describing it. So B, describe one economic change in the Americas that occurred as a result of the developments in the second paragraph. Okay, cool. Second paragraph is this one here. So that's a lot of stuff going on, but they're talking about how Africans, the Europeans no longer want what Africans have. Instead, they want one thing, and that's slaves, enslaved people. So that trade is going to take off, and the Africans will become victims of the discovery of America as surely as the American Indians. That's the last quote there. Thank you, Jack Weatherford. So then it says, describe one economic change. So an economic change, you would need to get into really anything about the introduction of the slave trade there is probably going to get you good. Because doesn't it say specifically, describe one economic change in the Americas? So plantation economies, cash crop economies, using slave labor, enslaved Africans as kind of the key point. So any plantation economy type, that's what I would have gone on that one. And then C, so if you you couldn't just be like, plantations are a thing now. Okay, describe that. Well, with the introduction of African slaves into the New World, the American economy was drastically shifted to a plantation economy. Plantations or the locations, maybe don't say hacienda. Describe one as a result of developments discussed in the second paragraph, and the second paragraph is talking. Well, I mean, technically, if you are it does say that the American Indians were devastated, so that's an economic change too. I think they're really probably here. And again, heads up, they don't release these. They haven't released these rubrics yet. They'll release them in like July or June or something. So I don't know what they really want. I'm just telling you what I think. So here, anything I would go. My head would be like, they're talking about the slave trade. How does that affect the American economy, plantation economy, and the enslaved labor that goes with it? So coerced labor, chattel slavery, that kind of thing. See. Explain one reason why the American Indians became victims of the discovery of America, as suggested by the author. Smallpox. Any of that Columbian Exchange stuff. Ooh, let's get that Columbian Exchange stuff there. So that would be a good one there. Encomienda, hacienda systems, all that stuff works there. So also the death of their culture, right? With the end of Incan and Aztec culture, not ending, but definitely being lessened. So that's one. That's the first one. Section 2, again, if you didn't have this one, you can do it now. Pause it here. If you haven't read this one, read this one. All right, welcome back. So for here, this one is a lady, Louise Otto Peters. Never heard of her, but that doesn't really mean much. I don't hear of a lot of people. She's a German writer, women's newspaper. Ding, ding, ding. There's what's going on here. Women's newspaper that is banned. Ooh, okay. So you need to immediately think of women's rights, feminism, equality, maybe suffrage, that kind of thing is probably what's coming your way. And she's saying to my sisters, spread liberty. So women's rights, stand up for the people, even not just women, but everyone. Awesome. So identify one likely audience. When she's throwing that sisters line down, that's where I would go audience wise. Any other suffrage related people. Now there's a hyper specific thing here that you may have picked up on. This is 1849. So 1849, there was a big German Revolution in 1848. Also 1848 was when the Communist Manifesto was written. I feel like that was one of the dozen dates to know for AP World History. Anyway, that showed up there. So if you knew that, in Germany, who was German? Marx was German. So anything like that for workers, for women, that's what I would have said. Then describe. Describe. It'll never happen until it does. Describe is here for you to deal with. So there you go. For describe, it says describe one historical context during the 19th century that explains the increased poverty and misery. So again, at the end here, they're saying increased poverty and misery. For me, historical context, I would start talking Industrial Revolution stuff there, and how poor people, the working class being downtrodden. Again, it's the mid of the 1800s. If you're familiar with Marx, that's really going to help you here because that's kind of the year it went down. That's what I would go with there. That's the historical context of the increased poverty and misery. You could go, there was also a big revolution in 1848, the revolutions of 18, it's kind of an AP Euro thing, but that could go there too. And then finally, explain how one ideology or set of ideas likely influenced the author's claim in the passage. Okay, any real enlightenment, if you said 19th century liberalism and you got into that, but any like enlightenment, women's rights, feminism, suffrage, or even communism. If you talk about communism, she's kind of poo-pooing on the Industrial Revolution's effects there. Go with that. All right, how you doing? That's two. Hopefully that was okay for you. Then you got a choice, 3 or 4. All right, let's do the choice thing first. This is a Unit 3 SAQ. So what are you going to do? Do you want to do Unit 3 SAQ or do you want to do a Unit 5 SAQ? Which one do you want to do? For everyone who said I didn't pick the DBQ right, what I meant was the third SAQ is going to be about the expansion of Islamic empires in Unit 3. That's what I meant. Anyway, that's kind of what this is. So if you like really studied that hard because I said it or I tried to guess it or whatever, well, you can get a lot of that here on this question. So again, if you haven't, this one says, identify one technological military factor that contributed to the gunpowder. I don't want to do finger guns. Gunpowder, right? That's the move. Explain one way that Muslim rulers during the period 1300 to 1600 use economic policies to generate revenue. I told you in Unit 3, they are only going to ask you these specific things. One of which is, how do they make money? Zamindars, tax farming, boom, 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 boom. Go with all that. And then see, explain one reason why some Muslim rulers during the period circa 1300 to 1600 adopted tolerant policies. If you know Akbar, that's going to help you there. But if you know Suleiman, who was my MVP of Unit 3, weird how he showed up, and religious tolerance, and the fact that you had to be, because these are diverse communities of, if you're the Ottomans, Christians and Jews and Muslims of all kinds, and then if you're the Mughals, it's Hindus and Muslims of all kinds, and so you kind of have to be there for that. So that's me on the third one. Again, I'll try to, I don't want to keep you here all day, but Unit 4, or a question for the SAQs, identify one factor that contributed to the outbreak of revolutions. It's the Enlightenment, guys. It's the Enlightenment, and it's the Enlightenment. 1750 to 1900, that's what I would have gone with. You could say colonies don't like being colonies. I mean, that kind of works all over the place. And then also explain one way in which revolutionary movements were challenged as they attempted to change societies in the period 1750 to 1900. So I guess my big one there is, I don't know, that's a tough one. C is tough. C is tough. I mean, could you go rogue here and say the abolition movement? I mean, is that a revolutionary movement? Ooh, will they count that? That definitely hits hard in the United States in the 1860s. You could get a lot of the French Revolution went crazy, but they removed that from the curriculum, so never mind. Bolivar had a lot of trouble after his revolution, specifically keeping his state together, but also trying to officially end slavery everywhere in Latin America, so that didn't always come to fruition. So I'll maybe go with something like that. On that one, that's a tough one. So between you and me, I'm picking number 3 here. I'm picking, I'm up here. I'm Unit 3, gunpowder empires, tolerance, zamindars, tax farming, boom. But 4's there too if you wanted to do 4. All right, so the DBQ, ooh, just as I predicted, the new transportation and/or technologies affected African societies during the period 1850 to 1960. So then you get a map. The map here doesn't do much for you in terms of the documents or in terms of like writing, but it does when they mention places, like they do this before. I feel like the last time they did this was if you did the Portuguese in the Indian Ocean. I feel like that's one they did where they were like, oh, there's so many place names that you're just not going to know, that they just threw a map and were like, all right. When they're talking about it, you can be like, oh, that's Ibadan, or that's Kimberley. What's Kimberley? Well, Kimberley is a big mine in South Africa, whatever. So that's there. And then you go through and then, you got the bullet points as well. Ooh, new this year. No more boxes. They used to have boxes for the documents. So scroll through and read the documents if you want. You've got the letter saying, so again, it's communication and transportation. So how did these improvements go? So what do you do first? You read the documents, and then the context is easy. Imperialism, industrial evolution stuff. And then for the actual thesis, it really helps them control them more. That's brought up several times. It also connects them to greater trade and growth. That's another way to go. You could also say it not just connects the empire, but it also allows the Europeans to exploit them more. Any of those things were all brought up in the document. So you drop one of those, you kind of group the documents together. I'm not going to read you the documents here or whatever. But as you go through real quick, you got the people complaining, like, what is this tax you're putting on us to pay for rail lines? Like, what is that? We don't want to pay that. Then you have these guys who are miners. I believe these are 2 miners walking back from the mines, and so carrying their trophies. And this is, again, a lot of chances for sourcing on this one. I think this one is the better DBQ of the 2 if I'm picking. Then the third document here, talking about a war, and they keep cutting the communication lines, and wow, it's really be helpful if we could go back and put those back up. And like, don't worry, we're going to send troops to stop this so that we can stay better communicated. I mean, that's total control right there. Talking about, oh, look how great it is. Egypt's so connected. Look at all the shops that are selling European goods. Like, that's how communication and transportation is affecting these places. It's kind of a big theme in Unit 5 and 6, for that matter, that these places are kind of going away, at least economically becoming dependent. Document 5 shows that it's also spreading diseases. Telegraph doesn't. But you know that trains will, and urbanization, that's another effect that you could have talked about. Document 6, kind of a bit of a brag fest here as to what they're doing, specifically with the rail lines and the abolition of slavery. And so you could talk about that. You could talk about how the arrival of the Europeans, that was technically what they said they were doing there. So, I mean, that's a good thing, ending slavery, and they kind of replaced it with a similar system. But, and then like I mean, they're literally talking about both of those things in here. So document 6 kind of gives you that little taste. And then document 7 is a Nigerian, and he's literally telling you about his, like, here was what I did, here's when I would take the train in and out, and kind of those ideas. So put those together, group them how you will. For that, I would say context, industrial revolution, imperialism, thesis is any of the ones we mentioned. I mean, you could literally say it's spread disease, and you probably get the point there. But I would say like connectivity. If you said anything about control, like more control, that's the vibe I'm getting out of it. Because again, there's a million answers to that question, but then they give you these 7 documents, so you got to kind of use them. If you're taking AP US history next year, like take this knowledge with you. Like that's kind of what they're going to go for. That's kind of what they want from you. So group them together in terms of control, economic outcomes, and or what else do you have in there? That kind of covers it. Those would be the 2 points I would drive home in the thesis. Outside information, you could really drop any, if you know anything about Cecil Rhodes. Berlin Conference is a big deal. That happens in this time period here. Yeah, I mean, there's all this going on, and they just don't even talk about the Berlin Conference. I mean, anything you knew about imperialism in Africa is in this. I mean, 1850 is pretty early. I mean, the Berlin Conference is 1881, one of the dozen dates to know. I think it's 1881. I think it's 1881. Whatever, dates don't matter. If you know Ethiopia and what's going on there, let me tell you a great one. Did you write about the Cape Town to Cairo rail line? Ding, ding, ding. That's a good one, right? So that's the DBQ. That's what I would have done. That would get you some solid points there. Sourcing, I mean, you can go back and see that how the sourcing works on each of them. I mean, you have a first-hand account for document 7. You have 2 British colonial officials writing about how awesome everything is there. You have an investigation by a British Parliamentary Commission into the spread of tuberculosis, kind of pointing out how the rail lines point. So you can jump back in this, like a shipping company talking about how awesome it is that they're taking over. I mean, maybe document 3 here is the most like blatant. Like you're getting insider info here between the British and what they're doing in Africa, why they're really there. So you could get behind white man's burden theories and all kinds of stuff. If you're looking at historical situation, you get into mining stuff here. Protestant minister, that looks like a civilizing mission, right? Any of those things work. If you didn't have this one, I'm sorry. This was the good one. This was the best one. The next one's fine. This was the best one. All right, LEQs real quick. In the period 1200 to 1450, so you got to pick, so let's pick. In 1200 to 1450, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Confucianism included ideas about social structure, gender roles, and political authority that influence societies. These things are so generic. The intros to the LEQs are classically generic. Then, develop an argument, so make a thesis, that evaluates the extent to which. So make an argument that says how much to which one or more of these belief systems shaped societies and or political systems in Asia during this period. 1240. So this is a unit 1-2 question. If I'm taking this test, I keep reading. Like, this is okay. This is a good one. This is doable. I mean, for me, for this one, it's all about Confucianism. It's all about civil service exams, filial piety. Really, which belief system do you know the most about? Like, you could talk about the spread of Hinduism into Southeast Asia, and you could talk about the caste system. I mean, because they're asking you social or political structure, so you talk about the impact of the caste system on society. But I would have gone civil service exam spreading around into Korea, Japan type thing. But it says to which one or more. You could talk a little bit about each one here. Sometimes they'll say one, but here they said one or more. So if you kind of like knocked around on that, that's fine. It's not the one I would have written. So if you wrote that one, great. Oh man, the other two are so much better. Sorry. The other two are so much better. Develop an argument that evaluates the extent to which. So I'm not even going to read the little intros are so generic. Like it might as well just say words. Develop an argument that evaluates the extent to which. So make a claim. It says how much. Economic rivalries were the primary motivation for the expansion of European empires in this period. So 1450 to 1750 is all about maritime empires. So give the background to that, give the background to technology, give the background to trade routes, give the background to Columbus, blah, 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 blah. That's your context. Your thesis has something to do with the economic drive if you know the Portugal, Spain, I know we went over that in my class. Portugal, Spain, the Treaty of Tordesillas type stuff, that's good here. Mercantilism is good here. That's primarily why they're so like sheltered in those mercantilist economic systems is because of that. So if you did that, that's good. Yeah, anything about religion too, Catholics, Protestants can kind of tie in a little bit. That might be some extra outwardly stuff that you may not think of right off because it's asking you economics. I would go like explorers. I mean, in my class, we took a second and talked about how many wars there were in this period over stuff, Portugal and Spain, and Portugal and the Dutch and the British. So any of those things talking about fighting over power is great. I'm not writing that one either. I'm writing the fourth one. Fourth one is probably something you guys just talked about in class. Evaluate the extent to which medical and scientific discoveries benefited individuals and or people, societies, whatever. So how did medical and scientific discoveries benefit people? All that disease stuff from Unit 9. All the vaccines, antibiotics, birth control, the pill. Any of that stuff is kind of golden here. There's so much stuff because we're going during the 20th century. So from 1900 to 2000, really 1901 to 2001, but that's neither here nor there. So any of those things, I mean, I would lean heavy on all the diseases and medicines and all the things like that. Antibiotics and vaccines would be my big two. You could talk about the Green Revolution here. That benefits people and societies, and you could get into a crazy amount of stuff about that. So there's a ton of evidence for that one. That's my go-to.